Friends, hi. I'm Pastor Judine Duerwaechter, co-pastor with the Manitowoc Cooperative Ministry. And today I join you for a daily devotion on Psalm 91. And I join you, yes, believe it or not, what you're seeing is real. I join you from my recovery bed in my home as I recently had knee replacement surgery. But there's no rest for the wicked, as you know. And as long as I'm not taking any narcotics for pain, I am able to have some clear thinking about our psalmist today and how is it that he can inspire us, hopefully. So I'm going to read to you some select verses from Psalm 91. Remember that Psalms were written for the purpose of a song, for singing, for celebrations and festivals in the temple and in the synagogue. Okay, so that sometimes is hard for us to grasp because we often are reading the psalm in the context of worship, but this particular psalm we often sing. And it'll be super familiar to you because we actually sing it quite a bit. It's called On Eagle's Wings in the context of funeral services, which is interesting. I mean, of course, it's a psalm about life, and yet we sing it more often in a celebration of what we call death. And, I suppose that doesn't matter. We are celebrating ongoing life. So, but it's just interesting to me that it's something that you'll be greatly familiar with, all because you have sat in a funeral service for someone that you know and have loved. So just hear these words from the wonderful, beautiful hymn On Angels' Wings. I'll read to you some select verses of Psalm 91. You who live in the shelter of the Most High, who abide in the shadow of the Almighty, will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, or the arrow that flies by day. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you, because you have made the Lord your refuge, the Most High your dwelling place. No evil shall befall you, no scourge come near your tent. Those who love me, I will deliver. I will protect those who know my name, etc., etc. And the psalmist goes on and on. Again, you could hear the words, I'm guessing, of the famous hymn On Eagle's Wings. So we get a real good understanding that, remembering that these psalms were in fact sung, and this really helps us to understand that because we in fact sing this psalm ourselves quite regularly. I'm particularly fond of verse 14 because we hear in a lot of psalms how the psalmist, whoever it is that is writing it, is, trusting in God at some point in the psalm, gets to a place where the psalmist trusts in God. And this psalmist has an enormous trust in God and believes completely that he will be always delivered or protected. His prayers are heard. He's rescued. He's honored by God for actually trusting in God, for what verse 14 says, for those who love me. So the goal is that we find the how to have God in our lives. We understand the how is in our loving God. And it's complicated for us because as human beings, we so often think or feel that God doesn't perhaps love us or know us. Some of us have grown up in religious histories where we may have felt very unloved by God or undeserving of God, which is not a truth to the theology of Jesus Christ. But nonetheless, we get this feeling that we may not be loved by God. And then how are we supposed to love ourselves if we're not, if we're not really feeling that we're loved by God? In verse 14, though, it really tells us that's backward thinking, that the goal for us to align ourselves with love, to remember who we are and whose we are, is to love God. Because there's just no question about God loving us. The work is in our loving God. We are responsible for how well we are delivered or protected or answered or rescued or honored by God. And the how we get there is by how we choose to love God, how much we love God. And you might ask, well, how do I know if I'm, loving God, basically? And I feel that the answer to that simply lies in, if you have no other evidence that God exists, none, but only to see yourself in the mirror, do you believe there's a source of life that created the ability for you to be in existence? So if you are the only possibility to experience the evidence of God and God's love for you, how do you love God in return? And it simply happens by how you love yourself. Knowing that the source of life created you, that the source of life has no deficit to do for you what Psalm 91, the psalmist says that God does for him because he loves God. So God does these things for him because he loves God. There's no deficit in God's ability to provide for you whatever it is that you are asking of God. There's no deficit in the source of life. It's not a pie with only a certain amount of pieces. It's so huge and universal and cosmic and indescribable that we can't really even wrap our heads around it. So these beautiful imageries show up in these beautiful poems in the Psalms, whether it's a teaching to prose or poetry itself. The imagery is just beautiful because we got to dummy it down a little bit for our minds to think about it. So it is in about you loving you. And I recognized, like in verse 7, this particular psalmist sees people dying all around him, thousands here on the right and thousands here on the left, but yet his life is spared. Somehow he's not falling into that same despair. I think about our pandemic right now with COVID-19, and we have all kinds of people in our lives that know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who has died of COVID. But you, if you're looking at this and watching this today, you have not. You have been protected from this somehow, some way, because you're doing something that's protecting you, because you are loving and respecting yourself. You are seeing yourself as a created, beautiful entity of the source of all life, of God. You are part of God, and that is to be loved, deeply loved and respected. So this psalmist and you and I can actually have a little bit in common here as we continue to trust in taking refuge in God, because the pandemic is just too big for us alone to resolve. The solutions that are coming and making it curable and go away, I believe that they come when we work together in love. That's the bottom line. And to get out of God's way and let God heal us and let God love us. And that happens, you open that gateway to do so by how you treat and love and respect yourself. So I hope this has been helpful today, friends. I'll see you tomorrow. You keep following. God knows where I will bring my new titanium knee and myself to share a daily devotion with you. But I'll be there for you. And take great care until then. And remember to live to love.